Kevin Warwick, you state that the development of intelligent devices implanted into humans will make us some kind of cyborgs. What exactly do you mean by a cyborg?
Well, cyborg is a cybernetic organism, part human or part animal, part machine. And to me it's this close link, not perhaps physical but more mental, that your brain is no longer just a biological standalone entity, but it is part biological, part silicon, part human, part machine.
So this means that human beings are not anymore autonomous as they was before?
Very, very different. Autonomous in a different sense. So still autonomous perhaps, but in the sense not only of their humanity, but of their cyborgness. They're an autonomous cyborg, partly human, partly machine in the way they think.
Maybe we should start with discussing why we are moving in that direction. You say that this is inevitable. Why do you argue that? Don't we have choices?
I think firstly for people with disabilities, mental diseases or even physical problems that of a neural nature, there's a possibility of using the technology that we now have. So there's a drive there for medical purposes. At the same time, we can see with the technology two things. One is that the technology on its own is being developed more and more, perhaps in the military domain, potentially to act against humans. So with that technology we also have the chance of actually upgrading, linking with it, really along the lines, if you can't beat the technology that's getting more and more intelligent, well, let's upgrade human intelligence. So there it does become, I think, a necessity that in order to stay in control or to stay ahead of intelligent machines that are being developed, the possibility is there for all humans to upgrade their intelligence to hopefully stay in control.
And not only the possibility, but also you state the necessity.
Well, I think it's a necessity that if we don't do that, that we're going to face in 10 or 20 years' time intelligent machines that are making the decisions, perhaps a Terminator type of scenario for real. The machines will have decided, why do we listen to these stupid humans, let's go for it ourselves.
And you have used yourself as an experimental tool for this, for experiencing how this will change and affect your feelings and your understanding of yourself as a human being, isn't that so?
Yeah, I think the best way to find out what it actually means and what the possibilities are is to try things for yourself. The first implant I had was in 1998.
Yes.
That was an RFID, a radio frequency identification device. All it did was identify me to the computer in my building, so the computer opened doors for me, switched on lights and said hello. And it was really looking at perhaps what Orwell had called the Big Brother scenario, and some people looked at it in a negative way.
You in fact took inspiration from Orwell.
Oh yeah, very much so, very much so. But at the same time, various scientists in the 90s had been saying in the future we won't need passports, we won't need keys to open our cars or doors, we'll all have a little implant and that'll do it for us. So Orwell had been very much perhaps a suggester for science that had then come to the point in the mid-90s where we had the technology to try it. But I have to say what I found, because lights were coming on, because doors were opening, I felt very positive about it.
Yes.
This implant was doing all this cool stuff for me, and it opened up my mind to the possibility not only of your body being identified to the computer and the internet and so on, but within your body you can change the signals as well. It wasn't just a passport type of signal, but you could change the signals dependent on what was going on in your body. And that's really what led me to the second implant that I had.
which was in the year of 2002?
That was 2002. It took 4 years for us to get that together. Initially we were thinking maybe just link up muscular signals to the computer, but really, well, the technology is there, let's try it, let's link the nervous system to the computer and onto the internet, which we did. So I had a bi-directional interface. It was very much like putting an electric plug in a socket. I had a 100-pin plug put into my nervous system to electronically link my brain, my nervous system with the computer and the internet in both directions. My neural signals could be sent to the computer, but also signals from the computer could stimulate my nervous system, could stimulate my brain.
And what did you find out about this second device? Was that quite as pleasant as the first one?
I think the second experience for me was more profound than the first in terms of things. Turned out, I think, mostly to be a lot simpler than we imagined.
Yes.
The neural signals, what I would describe as brain signals, but the medical world call them neural signals,
yes.
We could use to switch on lights. I drove a wheelchair around. The signals were sent across the internet.
Yes.
I went to New York and the signals were sent back to the UK to control a robot hand. So my body was extended via the internet and the nervous system. When joined together, it means your whole concept of body changes. It's no longer what we have here. It's wherever your brain signals go, which the internet will take them wherever you want, maybe by satellite and so on to other planets ultimately.
Did you think about this also rise the possibility for all kinds of abuse? For instance, when you made a speech to this conference yesterday, I was a little bit nervous if anybody was transmitted from your arm movements, because they were very large, and I thought, poor your wife, or poor anybody who is now bound to imitate all the movements.
I think it is a new technology, and it does open up enormous positives. An enormous difference is the whole possibility of communicating by thought, which to me, that's going to be possible. So it's very exciting, it's something new, but at the same time it opens up lots of negatives. Hacking into your nervous system, hacking into your brain. Viruses, from a cybernetic point of view, a signal is a signal. So signals in the computer that can affect positively the way your brain works, like cyber narcotics, you could say, like a drug, but also that can be negative, that it's like a biological virus that originates from an electronic signal.
Yes.
So there are all sorts
So you could be poisoned, for instance.
You could be poisoned, or lose some functions because of the electronic signals going into your body.
Yes.
Where those signals come from, maybe it's by accident, maybe it's a nasty person or a nasty cyborg or a nasty machine that has put those signals onto your nervous system.
What about all those problems?
Well, I think at the moment, from a scientific point of view, what we need to do is to look and research and see what is possible, and that's what I was doing, to look, we can do this, but in seeing that we can do this, it raises those problems. I think if let's say you and I are going to have our brains linked together, and maybe other people, our security is going to have to be a lot more effective than it is now on a computer-based system. We're not going to want people or machines hacking into our brains. So it just takes security onto a whole new level. It means commercially, if you're into looking to where there's money to be made or whatever system we have in the future, this is a prime area. Go into security of the intranet type. This is where it's going to be important. So it will have to be dealt with.
These security problems, are they the reason why you have waited now 4 years for the third implant, and still maybe are waiting a little bit longer because there's something you have to make safe before you do the next step of your experimental life?
I don't think it's security, because for me, from a scientific point of view, I want to go for it. given the risks, it's really trying to minimize the risks as best we can.
Yes.
And the risks, really, for me, the next one is a brain implant. And what we're looking at the moment is where exactly is it going to be positioned? Will there have to be more than one implant because we're looking for bidirectional signaling, and maybe in one area of the brain we can't get that? I think a key area, though, is durability. And this is something that has come out with Paolo Dario's presentation at the conference. Long-term durability of the implant. For the last project, the implant was in for 3 months.
Yes.
It worked fine for 3 months, but 3 months is only 3 months.
Yes.
For a brain implant, for me, I think once this goes in, it's going to stay in. I can't see it coming out. It would be far too traumatic.
Yes.
So if it stays in, I've got to be pretty sure that it is going to stay in there, that it's not going to dissolve in my brain, that it's not going to move about and rupture my brain, that be pulled in some area. I need to be pretty sure that when it gets put in position, it's going to stay there for the rest of my lifetime, which I hope is quite a long one.
This brain implant, will it connect you to the internet, say, pretty much the same way as threadless connections from computers are doing today?
Very, very much so, but just hopefully when I want it to. I think for me it'll be like making a telephone call, that you just do it when you are in control of it.
Yes.
So for a period when I'm in control, yes, my brain will be hooked into the internet. For that period, security will, I suppose, as last time when my nervous system was put on the internet, the main security was we didn't tell people what we were doing.
Yes.
So we might have to do it from a location, an IP location that people don't know about at that time.
Yes.
And the security will simply be lack of knowledge on other people's part for the period of that experiment.
It should be in the way that you could decide whether you would be connected or not, so that, for instance, when you're sleeping, a person cannot come into your brain and decide what you're dreaming about, or?
I think so. I mean, I think for the type of implant, affecting dreams probably will not be possible. It will be more a communication device I've got. But long term, clearly, dreams, memories, all those things are up for grabs. I mean, if I could have the dreams that I want, you know, maybe I want a night with Meg Ryan, and I can put a bit of software in and I go to sleep and I can dream of Meg Ryan all night. I think that would be quite cool. I wouldn't mind. It wouldn't have to be Meg Ryan, but I think there is a market there.
Yes.
And for memories that you want, maybe you support a local football team and they keep losing, well, let's have a memory of them winning. Or why not have some positive things? So I think there's an enormous potential market there. But again, it's positives and negatives, that if you can have the memories you want, then there's the potential for somebody to change the memories that you have into something that they want you to have.
So it will not be too late to get a good childhood.
No, that's right. You can go relive your childhood. Suddenly your parents were wonderful. Wow, yeah, they understood you. Yeah, fantastic.
Yes. With the devices that connects computers to the internet, those are upgraded every 2 or 3 years. You have to get new versions.
Yeah.
What about a brain implant? Doesn't you have to get version 2.0, 3.0, etc. all the times, so that you will be opened and opened and opened again by surgeries?
Yeah, I think it is a point with a lot of the medical implants now, the Parkinson's disease implant, it really goes for 2 years and it needs a new power pack putting in, or needs to be serviced, if you like. And I think that is a potential problem here. There's two aspects. One is the software side of it, any signal processing that's going on. Now, it might be quite possible to remotely change that, to reprogram it. Even with the identification devices, you can reprogram your identification remotely. So that shouldn't be a problem. But when it comes to any physical hardware interface, yeah, I mean, if you wanted to change, then you would have to have one taken out and another one put in. And the technology is changing rapidly, the type of materials that are being used. So I think probably I will be faced with, in about 6 or 7 years after the implant, that I will have a piece of old technology. Maybe I'll have to have another implant. I don't know that I fancy having the original one taken out unless we've moved on much more with the way that an implant can be taken out.
Do you imagine that in the course of a couple of years, if several people have those kinds of implants, that they are forming a network independent of anything else but the internet?
I do see where there are a number of people connected. One of the main powers of that, if there's, let's say, 10 people having their brains linked in together, that it will be like the first telephone network. That suddenly you will be able to send communications to this limited group of people just by thinking about it. That's it. You don't, this old-fashioned thing called speech, you don't need to use anymore. And I think therefore it does open up all sorts of new possibilities. Maybe in the first instance it will be just a very simple telegraphic form. It'll be a geeky reason that people want to be linked in. But I don't think it's going to be too long before maybe it's a telephonic communication, and ultimately, of course, visual and memories that clearly we will be able to transfer from brain to brain in this way.
Completely changing the idea of what is an individual, isn't it?
Oh, I think the whole cyborg concept, where your brain is now partly the biological brain that you have as a human and partly a machine network brain that is linked to other humans. Now I is different. I am this combination. I am no longer this entity that you see before you. I, as a mental I, which is what Descartes was talking about, is now a combined, is a cyborg I, part human, part machine. So I think it does go to the basis of philosophy that we've had for 200 years. It redefines I as a sort of a we, and I think that as a cyborg, my moral standpoint, my ethical standpoint, the values that I hold will be very different. They will be based on human, that's how I started, but really they will be cyborg morals, cyborg values, cyborg ethics.
And this is exactly the kind of discussion you're interested in raising, isn't it?
Well, I think it's important. I'm a scientist. I want to go ahead with these trials, tests. I mean, I'm quite happy. Humans are limited in what they can do. So I feel let's have a look at being cyborgs and let's extend our capabilities. But ethically, how does that stand? I mean, if we're moving ahead en masse, fine, maybe we're happy with that. But we still have to perhaps worry about those we leave behind as humans, this subspecies that are not particularly intellectually bright that we're leaving behind. Maybe we should look after them in some way. After all, you know, they've been around for quite a few thousand years, so maybe we should feel benefactors and give them a reasonable amount of food and something to do with their pretty trivial life that they have, while we really go into the future and you know, taking in life and moving to new planets because we understand things in more dimensions and so on. So it's an opportunity to move forward, but perhaps ethically we should look after these humans we're leaving behind.
Speaking about understanding things in more dimensions, you often mention the problem that humans only have a limited number of senses and only understand the universe in 3 or at maximum 4 dimensions. Could you elaborate what you're meaning about taking this to a wider degree?
Well, certainly on the senses, humans have 5 senses. I think there are some feel maybe we've got a 6th sense, but scientifically I think it's widely believed 5 senses, of which vision is perhaps pretty good. But of course we only actually perceive now, as I'm here as a human, only taking in about 5%, as some scientists say, of the signals that there are in the world. So the possibility of enhancing my sensory input putting in infrared signals, ultrasonic signals. Ultrasonic, we know it works. We've done that scientifically. Infrared, I think, would be quite cool actually to have an infrared sense, ultraviolet senses and so on. So the possibility there as a cyborg of sensing the world in a much richer way, taking in a lot more information about what's going on around us. And in terms of understanding that information,
yes,
rather than this three-dimensional understanding that we have as humans, of understanding the world around us, even in 5 or 6 dimensions, will take us in leaps and bounds into the future. Maybe some of the problems we see with space travel that we simply can't conceive. We haven't been to Mars yet as humans, but maybe it's a problem of 3 dimensions. If we're looking at space travel in 6 dimensions, because we now have a brain as a cyborg that can deal with that, maybe we think, oh, how stupid we've been. All we've got to do is, and we find the solution straight away.
Okay, and this is a choice that we can make, and also the people you talked about before, the people who has been around for a few thousand years, that we have to take care of in some ways, they are free to choose not to do that. That is an individual choice, as you put it.
I think at the moment there is an individuality about the choice, but clearly, as with any technology, commercial interests, political interests, these sort of factors will come in, which I guess more than scientific interest. The scientific interest will show what is possible and what's
yes,
not, but then more than likely it will be commercial and political interest, that's the norm,
and
that say,
pressure,
and social pressures and so on, that say, well, for this group it is now possible. If you have the money or the capabilities to have this new technology, then you can become cyborgs. And to other people, they probably will not get that opportunity. But that is a fact of human life.
Professor Warwick, thank you very much for dwelling in this old-fashioned thing called speak.
Well, whilst we still have this old form of communication, I might as well use it while we still have it. But in a few years' time, when we carry out an updated interview, we probably won't not only need this old form of speech, but this visual thing called a camera and so on will have gone by the board. We'll just communicate what the whole thing,
and then transmit it to the whole world.
To the whole world of cyborgs.